Throw her to the rogues. For words. That was all it took to destroy everything Evelyn Hart had spent 24 years trying to protect. The great hall of Blackwood Keep fell silent. Hundreds of wolves stood beneath crystal chandeliers and silver banners, yet not a single voice rose in her defense. Evelyn stared at the man seated upon the obsidian throne. Daemon Blackwood, the Alpha King, the man she had trusted more than anyone, the man who would not even look her in the eye. Cold autumn rain rattled against the stained glass windows high above. The sound echoed through the chamber like distant footsteps. Evelyn's wrists trembled, though she forced her hands to remain at her sides. She would not beg. Not here. Not in front of all these people. A murmur swept through the crowd. Some looked shocked. Others looked satisfied. A few even smiled. The accusation still hung in the air. Treason. Betrayal. Conspiracy against the crown. Evelyn could barely recognize the words being spoken about her. They felt like they belonged to someone else. Someone darker. Someone she had never met. Your Majesty, she said softly, her voice carrying farther than she expected. Daemon finally lifted his gaze. Silver eyes met blue. For one brief second, she searched for doubt. For hesitation. For the man who once stood beside her beneath moonlit skies discussing the future of the kingdom. She found nothing. His expression remained carved from stone. The evidence has been reviewed, Daemon said. The decision stands. A painful knot tightened inside her chest. Not because she feared exile. Not because she feared the rogues waiting beyond the kingdom's borders. What hurt most was the certainty in his voice. He truly believed she had betrayed him. Around the throne stood members of the royal council. Lord Victor Ashford lowered his eyes, pretending not to notice her. Lady Margaret Vale adjusted her gloves. Neither seemed eager to witness what came next. Evelyn noticed details she might never have noticed before. Small things. Nervous glances. Tightened jaws. Faces avoiding hers. Something felt wrong. Deeply wrong. Yet she could not prove it. Take her, Daemon ordered. 2 royal guards stepped forward immediately. Their polished armor reflected the torchlight. Neither looked comfortable. One was a young wolf she recognized from the Eastern patrols. His hand shook slightly as he approached. Evelyn offered him a faint smile. The gesture surprised him. It's all right, she whispered. You don't have to look so afraid. The young guard swallowed hard. I'm sorry, he said quietly. She nodded once. Then she walked forward without resistance. The crowd parted as she crossed the hall. Expensive perfumes mixed with candle smoke. Velvet gowns brushed against polished marble floors. Wealth. Power. Status. It all seemed so meaningless now. Halfway to the massive doors, a familiar voice reached her. Evelyn. She stopped. Her heart skipped painfully. Daemon had risen from the throne. For the first time all evening, uncertainty flickered across his face. The room held its breath. Hope stirred inside her despite herself. Perhaps he had realized something. Perhaps he intended to stop this madness. Daemon stared at her for a long moment. Then his expression hardened once more. If you are innocent, he said, the moon will reveal the truth. The words landed heavier than any sentence before them, because they were not hope. They were farewell. Evelyn held his gaze. And if the moon already knows the truth? She asked. No one answered. Not Daemon. Not the council. Not the wolves watching from the shadows. Silence became her answer. Slowly, she turned away. The enormous doors opened. Cold wind rushed inside. Beyond them waited darkness, rain, and the long road toward rogue territory. As Evelyn stepped outside, thunder rolled across the distant mountains. Hidden among the storm clouds, the moon briefly appeared. Its pale light touched the strange birthmark hidden beneath the sleeve of her dress. A mark she had carried since birth. A mark her mother had always warned her never to reveal. Behind her, the doors of Blackwood Keep closed with a deep echo. Before her stretched miles of wilderness. What Evelyn did not know was that somewhere beyond those forests, beyond the lands marked forbidden on every royal map, wolves were already waiting. And when they learned who had been sent to them, everything the Alpha King believed was about to change. Rain followed Evelyn for nearly 6 miles beyond the kingdom gates. By midnight, Blackwood Keep had disappeared behind a curtain of mist and darkness. Only the distant glow of the castle towers remained, faint as dying stars on the horizon. The road beneath her boots had turned to mud. Cold wind tugged at her cloak. Every step carried her farther from the only home she had ever known. Yet strangely, The deeper she traveled into exile, the lighter something inside her felt. Not happier, not hopeful, simply free from the crushing weight of pretending everything was fine. For years she had served the kingdom faithfully. For years she had ignored whispers, political games, hidden rivalries. Now she wondered how many people had been lying to her all along. The forest grew thicker as dawn approached. Towering pines blocked most of the gray morning light. The world smelled of wet earth and cedar. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called before falling silent. Evelyn paused beside a stream and knelt to drink. The water was icy against her fingertips. Her reflection stared back at her. Pale skin, rain-soaked blonde hair, tired blue eyes. She barely recognized herself. A sudden crunch of leaves made her look up. Instantly, her pulse quickened. 2 royal guards emerged from the trees. She recognized them immediately. The younger one from the throne room and an older wolf named Marcus Hale. Neither carried weapons in their hands. "We are not here to arrest you," Marcus said before she could speak. Evelyn slowly rose to her feet. "Then why are you here?" The older guard exchanged a glance with his companion. "Orders," he answered. "We are to escort you to the border." Evelyn almost laughed. "To make sure I leave?" Marcus hesitated. "To make sure you arrive." That answer surprised her. The younger guard shifted uncomfortably. "There are places beyond the border that even patrols avoid." "Because of the rogues?" Evelyn asked. Neither man replied immediately. The silence itself was enough. They resumed walking together through the forest. Hours passed. The kingdom roads eventually disappeared behind them. Soon only narrow trails remained. Ancient trees stretched toward the sky like silent guardians. Occasionally, Evelyn noticed strange stone markers hidden among the roots. Symbols had been carved into them centuries ago. She could not read them, yet something about the markings felt oddly familiar. Around noon, they stopped beside an abandoned watchtower. Time had reduced most of it to crumbling stone. Ivy covered the walls. Moss swallowed the old foundation. Marcus removed a folded map from inside his coat. He studied it for several seconds before pointing west. "The border is less than a mile from here." Evelyn looked toward the distant hills. "And after that?" Marcus folded the map carefully. "After that, you are beyond our protection." The younger guard swallowed hard. "If you see anyone wearing a silver wolf symbol, trust them." Marcus shot him a warning look. Immediately, the younger wolf fell silent. Evelyn noticed the exchange. "What does that mean?" Neither answered. The tension between them grew heavier. Then Marcus stepped closer and lowered his voice. "There are truths hidden in these lands, Lady Hart." Evelyn blinked. He had not called her that since her arrest. Some truths survived longer than others. Before she could ask another question, he pressed something small into her hand. A polished silver coin. One side displayed the crest of Blackwood Kingdom. The other carried a symbol she had never seen before. A crescent moon surrounded by stars. Marcus closed her fingers around it. "Do not lose this." "Why?" Evelyn asked. The older guard looked toward the forest as if worried someone might be listening. "Because someone may recognize it." A chill traveled down her spine. "Recognize what?" This time Marcus did not answer. Instead he stepped back. "Our duty ends here." The younger guard looked genuinely distressed. "Good luck, Miss Hart." Then both men turned and began walking away. Evelyn watched them disappear among the trees. She stood alone for several moments, listening to the wind moving through the forest canopy. Eventually, she looked down at the silver coin resting in her palm. The crescent moon seemed to shimmer beneath the afternoon sunlight. Suddenly, a distant howl echoed through the hills. Then another. Then 3 more. Not threatening. Not aggressive. Something else. Something that sounded almost like a signal. Evelyn's breath caught. Slowly, she lifted her eyes toward the wilderness beyond the border. For the first time since leaving Blackwood Keep, she felt it clearly. The strange sensation that someone had been waiting for her long before she ever began this journey. The first thing Evelyn noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful silence of an empty forest. This was different. Alive. Watching. The distant howls had faded nearly an hour earlier, yet the feeling remained. Every step deeper into the wilderness seemed to pull invisible eyes toward her. Late afternoon sunlight filtered through the towering pines in thin golden beams. Shadows stretched across the forest floor. The air smelled cleaner here, untouched by roads, cities, or royal borders. Evelyn tightened her grip around the silver coin Marcus had given her. She had no destination, no map, No plan beyond continuing forward. The strange certainty she had felt earlier remained lodged inside her chest. Someone had been expecting her. The thought should have frightened her. Instead, it made her curious. A sudden movement between the trees froze her in place. 50 yards ahead, a massive gray wolf stepped into view. Its silver eyes locked onto hers. Evelyn stopped breathing. Another wolf appeared beside the first. Then another. Then another. Within seconds, more shapes emerged from the forest. Large wolves. Small wolves. Black, gray, brown, white. They appeared soundlessly from every direction. Evelyn's heart pounded. The stories returned immediately. Every frightening tale she had heard growing up. Rogues were dangerous, unpredictable, wild wolves who rejected every law of civilized packs. Children were warned about them around fireplace stories during winter storms. Yet something felt wrong about the image in her mind. The wolves surrounding her did not seem chaotic. They seemed organized, disciplined, intent. None bared their teeth. None moved aggressively. They simply watched, waiting. Evelyn slowly lowered her gaze. She did not want to appear threatening. Several long seconds passed. Wind rustled the pine branches overhead. Then a deep voice broke the silence. "Lift your head." Evelyn's eyes widened. A man stepped from the trees. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair streaked with silver despite appearing no older than 40. A long charcoal cloak hung from his frame. His eyes carried the same silver color she had noticed among the wolves. The animals immediately shifted aside, creating a path for him. The stranger approached until only 10 feet separated them. He stared at her face as though searching for something. Then his attention moved to her wrist. Specifically, to the sleeve that had shifted slightly during her journey. His expression changed instantly. Shock flashed across his features. Not fear. Recognition. "Impossible," he whispered. Evelyn instinctively stepped back. "Who are you?" The man did not answer. Instead, he dropped to one knee. The motion happened so suddenly that she wondered if she had imagined it. One of the largest wolves lowered its head beside him. Then another followed. Then another. Evelyn stared in disbelief as dozens of wolves began bowing. Not crouching. Not resting. Bowing. "Wait," she said. "What are you doing?" Nobody moved. Nobody looked up. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath. The silver-eyed stranger finally spoke. His voice trembled slightly. "We have waited a very long time." Evelyn's confusion deepened. "For me?" The man raised his eyes. There was unmistakable emotion there now. Hope. Relief. All. For the one carrying the moon-born mark. Her stomach tightened. "You know this mark?" Slowly, she pulled back her sleeve. The pale crescent-shaped birthmark rested against her skin exactly as it always had. Yet for the first time in her life, someone reacted as though it meant something. The stranger's expression softened. The stories were true. Evelyn's pulse quickened. What stories? Before he could answer, movement erupted throughout the surrounding forest. More figures emerged from the trees. Men, women, elderly wolves, young wolves. Dozens became hundreds. They gathered quietly around the clearing. None appeared hostile. Yet, every face carried the same stunned expression. One elderly woman covered her mouth. Tears filled her eyes. A teenage boy whispered something under his breath. Another woman simply stared. Evelyn felt overwhelmed. Someone needs to explain what is happening. The silver-eyed stranger rose slowly to his feet. "My name is Rowan Ash." He placed a hand over his heart. "I am guardian of the rogue territories." Then he glanced toward her birthmark once more. "And if I am correct, Evelyn Hart, you are standing where your family once ruled before history erased their name." The words struck Evelyn harder than the sentence Damon had given her. History erased their name. She stood frozen in the center of the clearing while hundreds of eyes remained fixed on her. Nobody laughed. Nobody questioned Rowan. The silence itself made his claim feel even more real. A cold breeze moved through the pines, lifting strands of her blonde hair. "You are mistaken," she said finally. "My family served the kingdom for generations. We were never rulers." Rowan studied her carefully. "That is what you were taught." Evelyn opened her mouth to argue, then stopped. How many things had she accepted simply because someone older had told her they were true? Around her, the gathered wolves slowly stepped aside. A path opened through the forest. Rowan gestured toward it. "Come with me." Evelyn hesitated. Every instinct told her this was dangerous. Yet nothing about the wolves surrounding her felt threatening. Confusing, yes. Impossible, absolutely. Dangerous, no. She slipped the silver coin into her pocket and followed. The crowd moved with them. Not closely, respectfully, as if maintaining a careful distance. The forest changed as they traveled. The trees grew older, larger. Moss covered massive roots that twisted across the earth like ancient roads. Sunlight filtered through the canopy in shimmering patterns. After nearly an hour of walking, Evelyn noticed something unusual. The terrain began sloping downward into a hidden valley. Her breath caught. She had never seen this place marked on any kingdom map. A vast settlement stretched before her. Stone cottages rested beside crystal-clear streams. Gardens flourished between winding pathways. Children laughed near a wooden bridge. Smoke rose peacefully from chimneys. Wolves moved through the village carrying baskets, tools, and supplies. It looked nothing like the savage road camps described in royal stories. It looked like a thriving community. "This is impossible," Evelyn whispered. Rowan smiled faintly. "That is exactly how the kingdom prefers it." As they entered the valley, people stopped what they were doing. Conversations faded. Faces turned toward her. An elderly man dropped the bucket he had been carrying. A young mother clutched her daughter's hand. Even the children grew quiet. The attention made Evelyn uncomfortable. "Please stop looking at me like that," she muttered. Rowan glanced sideways. "You remind them of someone." "Who?" He pointed toward the center of the settlement. There, rising above the rooftops, stood a massive white stone structure. Unlike anything Evelyn had ever seen, elegant towers reached toward the sky. Silver banners fluttered in the wind. Moon symbols decorated every archway. Time had weathered the building, yet its beauty remained undeniable. "The Moonborn Sanctuary," Rowan said softly. "It has stood here for over 600 years. Evelyn stared. "Who built it?" Rowan stopped walking. For several seconds, he simply looked at her. Then he answered, "Your family." Her heart skipped. Before she could respond, a voice called out from nearby. "Let her see." The speaker was an elderly woman wrapped in pale gray robes. Deep lines marked her face, yet her blue eyes remained sharp and clear. She approached slowly. The crowd parted immediately. Rowan lowered his head respectfully. "Elder Miriam." The old woman ignored him. Her attention never left Evelyn. "Come." Evelyn found herself following once more. Elder Miriam led her through the sanctuary's massive entrance hall. Moonlight poured through tall windows despite the late afternoon hour. The air smelled faintly of cedar and old parchment. Ancient murals covered the walls. Wolves, stars, crescent moons, forgotten kings and queens. Then Evelyn stopped walking entirely. At the far end of the hall hung an enormous portrait. The woman in the painting looked startlingly familiar. Blonde hair, blue eyes, the same shape of face, the same expression. The resemblance was impossible to ignore. Evelyn felt her pulse racing. "Who is she?" Elder Miriam's voice softened. Her name was Queen Ilara Moonborn. Evelyn stared at the portrait. The woman seemed to stare back. "She looks like me." "No," Miriam replied quietly. "You look like her." A heavy silence settled over the hall. Then the elderly woman reached toward Evelyn's wrist. Gently, she pulled back the sleeve covering the crescent-shaped birthmark. Tears instantly filled her eyes. "After all these years," she whispered, "the last daughter of the Moonborn line has finally come home." The room felt smaller after those words. Home. The last daughter of the Moonborn line. Evelyn stood motionless beneath the towering portrait while dozens of questions crashed through her mind. None of them had answers. Elder Miriam gently released her wrist. The elderly woman's hands trembled slightly. Not from weakness, from emotion. "There must be some mistake," Evelyn said quietly. "My mother never told me any of this." Miriam exchanged a glance with Rowan. Neither looked surprised. "Of course she did not," Miriam replied. "If she had, you would not have survived long enough to stand here today." A chill spread through Evelyn's chest. "What does that mean?" Rowan stepped closer. "It means your family spent generations protecting a secret." He gestured toward the portrait. The Moonborn line once united every wolf territory across the continent. Long before kingdoms existed. Long before Alpha Kings ruled from stone castles. Evelyn looked back at the woman in the painting. The resemblance unsettled her more with every passing second. Then what happened? The sanctuary grew quiet. Even the people gathered near the entrance seemed to hold their breath. Elder Miriam slowly walked toward one of the ancient murals covering the wall. Her fingers traced faded silver paint. Power attracts ambition, she said softly. Some wolves wanted unity. Others wanted control. Evelyn followed her gaze. The mural showed a gathering of different packs standing beneath a moonlit sky. Wolves of every rank appeared side by side. There were no thrones, no crowns, no symbols of dominance. The Moonborn queens ruled differently, Miriam continued. They were chosen because wolves trusted them, not because wolves feared them. Evelyn frowned. That sounded nothing like the world she knew. Every territory she had ever visited revolved around hierarchy. Strength determined status. Influence shaped loyalty. Yet the faces painted on the sanctuary walls seemed peaceful, united. The old alliances eventually broke apart, Rowan said. New rulers emerged. New kingdoms formed. Histories were rewritten. Evelyn slowly turned toward him. Rewritten. His expression darkened. When enough years pass, people begin believing whatever they are taught. The implications settled heavily between them. Someone had deliberately erased the Moonborn line from history. Not forgotten. Removed. Why? She asked. Rowan answered immediately. Because symbols are powerful. Miriam nodded. A forgotten queen cannot inspire loyalty. Evelyn stared at the floor for several seconds. Her thoughts drifted unexpectedly toward Blackwood Keep, toward the royal archives, toward the countless books she had read throughout her life. Not one had ever mentioned the Moonborn family. Not once. Suddenly, another memory surfaced. Her mother sitting beside a fireplace years ago, telling stories about stars, about wolves following moonlight through the wilderness, about hidden roads that appeared only when someone truly needed them. At the time, Evelyn had assumed they were bedtime stories. Now she wondered. My mother knew, she whispered. Miriam's eyes softened. Yes. The realization hurt more than expected. Her mother had carried this secret alone, protected it, buried it, then died before explaining why. A young woman entered the sanctuary carrying an old wooden chest. She placed it carefully upon a stone table before stepping back. Rowan opened the lid. Dust drifted into the air. Inside rested dozens of documents, maps, journals, and small silver artifacts. These belong to your ancestors, he said. Evelyn approached slowly. Her fingers brushed across a leather-bound journal. The cover carried the same crescent moon symbol she had seen on the coin. How long have you kept these? Rowan smiled faintly. For nearly 200 years. Evelyn stared at him. Waiting for someone you were not even sure existed? Hope survives longer than certainty, Miriam answered. The statement lingered in the silence that followed. Then something unexpected happened. A warm sensation spread across Evelyn's wrist. She looked down immediately. The crescent-shaped birthmark beneath her sleeve appeared brighter than before. Not glowing. Not magical. Simply clearer. More defined. As though reacting to something nearby. Several people noticed at the same time. Whispers moved through the sanctuary. Miriam's eyes widened. Rowan stepped forward. Do you feel that? Evelyn swallowed. Feel what? Before either could answer, a deep bell suddenly echoed through the valley outside. Once. Twice. 3 times. The sound rolled across the settlement like distant thunder. Every face in the room changed instantly. Hope vanished. Concern replaced it. Rowan moved toward the doorway. That should not be happening. Evelyn's pulse quickened. What is it? He looked back at her. For the first time since they met, genuine worry appeared in his silver eyes. Visitors. The bell continued ringing as Evelyn followed Rowan out of the sanctuary. Its deep tone rolled across the hidden valley, causing conversations to stop and doors to open throughout the settlement. Wolves emerged from homes, workshops, and gardens. Some looked worried. Others looked confused. Whatever the signal meant, it was unusual. Cool evening air greeted them as they stepped outside. The sky had begun shifting toward shades of gold and violet. Long shadows stretched across the valley floor. Evelyn noticed that many people were already moving toward the northern overlook. Rowan increased his pace. Elder Miriam followed closely behind. Who could be visiting? Evelyn asked. Rowan did not answer immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the distant ridge above the valley. Very few outsiders know this place exists, he said at last. Which means anyone who found us either got very lucky or came looking. Those words settled uneasily in Evelyn's mind. Together they joined the growing crowd climbing toward the overlook. Within minutes they reached a stone platform carved into the mountainside. From there, nearly the entire valley could be seen. Wolves gathered along the edge, staring toward the northern forest. Evelyn stepped forward. At first she saw nothing. Then movement appeared between the trees. Riders. Dozens of them. Their horses traveled slowly down a narrow mountain trail. No banners flew above them. No royal colors marked their cloaks. Yet their formation was organized, purposeful. The lead rider finally emerged into the open. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Evelyn frowned. She did not understand the reaction. The man looked ordinary enough. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark brown hair touched with gray. A weathered cloak covered most of his clothing. Yet the instant Rowan saw him, something changed in his expression. "It cannot be," he whispered. The rider dismounted before reaching the settlement. Then he began walking toward them alone. No guards. No escort. The crowd parted instinctively. Respect followed him like a shadow. When he reached the stone platform, he stopped several feet from Rowan. Neither man spoke for a long moment. Then the stranger smiled faintly. "You look older." Rowan laughed despite himself. "That is because it has been 20 years. The two men embraced briefly. Relief spread through the crowd. Whatever tension had existed moments ago began easing. Evelyn glanced toward Elder Miriam. The elderly woman looked stunned. "Who is he?" Miriam's eyes remained fixed on the newcomer. "Someone we thought was gone forever." The stranger finally noticed Evelyn standing beside Rowan. His gaze sharpened instantly. Not suspicious. Curious. Then his eyes dropped to her wrist where the edge of the crescent birthmark remained visible beneath her sleeve. The color drained from his face. He took one step forward. Then another. "No," he whispered. "That is impossible." Evelyn had heard those words several times already. She was beginning to dislike them. Rowan placed a hand on the man's shoulder. "Her name is Evelyn Hart." Silence followed. The stranger stared at her as though seeing a ghost. Finally, he lowered his head. "My name is Gideon Vale." The name triggered immediate reactions throughout the crowd. People exchanged shocked glances. Several younger wolves looked completely bewildered. Evelyn remained lost. "Should I know who you are?" A sad smile touched Gideon's face. "Probably not." He looked toward the valley below. "Most of the world believes I died 20 years ago." Rowan folded his arms. "Many of us did." Gideon nodded slowly. That was intentional. The statement only deepened the mystery. Before anyone could ask another question, Gideon reached into his cloak and removed a weathered leather tube. He handed it directly to Rowan. "I came because of this." Rowan opened it carefully. A parchment map slid into his hands. His expression changed immediately. Concern returned. "Where did you get this?" Gideon glanced toward Evelyn. "From a man who risked everything to deliver it." Rowan studied the map in silence. Elder Miriam moved closer. Her eyes widened. "That seal?" Evelyn stepped forward. "What is it?" Rowan looked up. For the first time since leaving the sanctuary, uncertainty appeared in his eyes. This map came from inside Blackwood Keep. A cold knot formed in Evelyn's stomach. Gideon nodded grimly. "Someone inside the kingdom has been searching for Moonborn records." The evening wind swept across the overlook. Around them, the crowd fell completely silent. Then Gideon spoke the words that made Evelyn's heart stop. "And whoever started the search already knows she is here." More than 100 miles away, Damon Blackwood stood alone inside the royal archives long after midnight. Dust floated through narrow beams of candlelight. Ancient shelves stretched toward the vaulted ceiling. Thousands of books surrounded him, yet he had not turned a page in nearly 10 minutes. His attention remained fixed on a single document spread across the table. The seal at the top made no sense. A crescent moon encircled by 7 stars. He had never seen it before 3 days ago. Now it seemed to appear everywhere. Damon leaned back and rubbed his eyes. Since Evelyn's exile, something had felt wrong. Not emotionally, factually. The evidence presented against her had been convincing at first. Too convincing. Every witness had agreed. Every document had supported the accusation. Every trail pointed toward guilt. Yet the deeper he investigated, the more perfect the entire case appeared. Real events were never perfect. Human beings made mistakes. Memories conflicted. Details shifted. The accusations against Evelyn fit together with unnatural precision. A knock interrupted his thoughts. "Enter." The heavy door opened. Captain Ethan Mercer stepped inside, carrying a stack of papers. The captain's expression immediately told Damon the news was not good. "Another discrepancy?" Damon asked. Ethan nodded. "3 more." He placed the documents on the table. Damon began reading. His jaw tightened. One witness had claimed to attend a meeting that records proved never happened. Another had signed a statement while traveling hundreds of miles away. A third appeared to have copied entire sections from a separate testimony. Damon lowered the papers slowly. How did we miss this? Ethan hesitated. Because nobody was looking. The answer stung. Damon stared across the archive. Memories surfaced unexpectedly. Evelyn questioning details during council meetings. Evelyn noticing inconsistencies others overlooked. Evelyn refusing to accept convenient answers. He pushed the thoughts aside. Regret changed nothing. Facts mattered. Facts could still be uncovered. Continue investigating, Damon said. Quietly. Ethan nodded. There is something else. Damon looked up. The captain seemed unusually uneasy. What? Ethan reached into his coat and removed a folded parchment. We intercepted correspondence leaving the capital. Damon unfolded it. The message was written in code. Most of it remained impossible to decipher. One sentence, however, had already been translated. His eyes narrowed as he read it. The Moonborn heir has been found. For several seconds the archive became completely silent. Damon read the line again. Then a third time. Moonborn, he said. What does that mean? Ethan folded his arms. We do not know. Damon turned toward the shelves lining the room. Suddenly a memory surfaced. Years ago, an elderly historian had attempted to gain access to restricted archives. The man had insisted entire chapters of kingdom history were missing. Damon remembered dismissing the claims as academic obsession. Now he was no longer certain. Find every record mentioning that name, Damon ordered. Ethan frowned. We already searched. And most references were removed. Damon slowly lowered the parchment. Removed. Not lost. Not forgotten. Removed. The distinction mattered. A lot. Dawn arrived before either man left the archive. Piles of forgotten records covered the table. Most contained little useful information. Then Ethan discovered a damaged ledger hidden behind a collapsed shelf. The pages were fragile. Water stains obscured much of the text. Yet one illustration remained intact. Damon stared at it in disbelief. The symbol matched the seal. Crescent moon. 7 stars. Beneath it appeared a faded note written centuries earlier. The Moonborn bloodline survives through the daughters. Silence filled the room. Ethan looked up first. That cannot be a coincidence. Damon did not answer. His mind was already racing ahead. Daughters. Bloodline. Hidden records. Erased history. Then another memory appeared. A memory he had ignored for years. Evelyn standing beside a balcony during a royal festival. Moonlight shining across her wrist. A strange crescent-shaped mark visible beneath her sleeve for only an instant. Damon froze. His heartbeat accelerated. No, he whispered. Ethan looked confused. Your Majesty? Damon stood, so suddenly his chair nearly tipped backward. Every piece finally collided. The accusation. The missing records. The coded message. Evelyn's birthmark. The impossible timing of everything that followed her exile. He looked toward the eastern windows where sunlight was beginning to rise above the kingdom. For the first time since sentencing Evelyn, genuine fear settled inside his chest. Not fear for himself. Fear that someone had manipulated him into removing the one person they needed gone. Damon grabbed his coat. Prepare horses. Ethan blinked. For where? Damon was already walking toward the door. The rogue territories. Behind him, forgotten pages rustled softly in the morning breeze. On the table remained the damaged illustration of the Moonborn crest. Beside it rested a final note barely visible beneath centuries of fading ink. When the last daughter returns, the wolves will remember. 3 days later, the hidden valley no longer felt hidden. Messengers arrived from territories no one had mentioned before. Wolves traveled through mountain passes, forest trails, and forgotten roads that did not appear on any official map. Some came alone. Others arrived in groups. Every morning, Evelyn woke to discover new faces throughout the settlement. Every evening, the population seemed larger than before. She stood beside the sanctuary balcony, watching another group enter the valley below. How many are there? She asked. Rowan followed her gaze. Thousands. Evelyn blinked. Thousands. Rowan nodded. Many packs never forgot the old stories. She looked down at the growing crowd. Wolves of every age filled the streets. Some wore traditional clothing from distant territories. Others carried symbols she had never seen. What surprised her most was the respect. No one treated her like a ruler. No one demanded anything. Yet everywhere she walked, conversations softened. Heads bowed. People smiled. The attention still made her uncomfortable. "They do not know me," she said quietly. Rowan's expression softened. "Perhaps they know what you represent." The answer lingered in her thoughts long after he left. That afternoon, Elder Miriam brought her to a circular stone chamber hidden beneath the sanctuary. Ancient maps covered the walls. Hundreds of candles illuminated carved symbols in the floor. At the center stood a polished stone table. Gideon was already waiting. Several other elders stood nearby. Their expressions were serious. "What happened?" Evelyn asked. Gideon exchanged a glance with Miriam. "News arrived this morning." Her stomach tightened. "What kind of news?" Gideon placed a folded parchment on the table. "The kingdom knows more than we expected." Silence settled over the room. Evelyn slowly unfolded the document. She immediately recognized the royal seal. Her pulse quickened. Where did this come from? "One of our contacts inside the capital." Gideon folded his arms. "Apparently the archives have been opened." Evelyn's thoughts immediately drifted toward Damon. She remembered his relentless curiosity whenever something failed to make sense. If he discovered inconsistencies in her case, he would investigate. That was simply who he was. Yet she pushed the thought away. It no longer mattered. Or at least she told herself it did not. "What happens now?" she asked. Before anyone could answer, a distant horn echoed across the valley. Once, twice, 3 times. Every elder in the room went silent. Rowan appeared in the doorway moments later. His breathing was slightly uneven. "They are here." The room instantly became still. Gideon moved first. "How many?" "More than expected." Evelyn looked between them. "Who?" Rowan met her eyes. "The northern packs." The answer carried weight she did not fully understand. Within minutes they climbed toward the highest overlook above the valley. Hundreds of wolves were already gathering there. The atmosphere felt different from before. Not fearful, anticipatory, as though everyone sensed history approaching. Evelyn stepped onto the stone platform. Her breath caught immediately. The valley beyond the northern ridge was filled with movement. Wolves. Thousands of them. Lines of riders stretched across the landscape as far as she could see. Banners fluttered in the wind. Silver, blue, black, white. Symbols from dozens of territories moved together beneath the afternoon sun. "This is impossible," Evelyn whispered. Rowan smiled faintly. "Not anymore." One by one, the arriving groups reached the valley entrance. Leaders dismounted. Elders stepped forward. Representatives from distant territories entered the settlement. Then something extraordinary happened. None of them headed toward the sanctuary. None approached the elders. Instead, every single delegation turned toward the overlook where Evelyn stood. The first leader lowered his head. Then the second followed. Then the third. A ripple spread through the valley. Thousands of wolves stopped moving. Silence rolled across the mountains. The wind itself seemed to pause. Evelyn's heartbeat thundered inside her chest. "Rowan," she whispered. He simply nodded. The moment arrived like a wave crossing the earth. One wolf knelt. Then another. Then another. The motion spread farther and farther until it reached every corner of the valley. Thousands of wolves lowered themselves together beneath the open sky. No command had been given. No announcement had been made. Yet the result was undeniable. An entire world was remembering something it had once lost. Tears filled Elder Miriam's eyes. Gideon lowered his head. Around Evelyn, every wolf present followed the same gesture. She stood frozen in disbelief as an ocean of bowed heads stretched across the valley floor. Then a distant sound rose from the southern ridge. Hooves. Fast. Urgent. Rowan turned immediately. His expression changed. "Someone is coming." Gideon stepped beside him. The approaching riders finally appeared atop the ridge. Black banners snapped in the wind. Royal banners. Evelyn's heart stopped. At the front rode a familiar figure with silver eyes and dark hair. Damon Blackwood had found the valley. For a moment, nobody moved. The valley stood suspended between two worlds. On one side, thousands of wolves remained kneeling beneath the afternoon sky. On the other, the royal riders descended the southern ridge with black banners snapping in the wind. Evelyn felt every heartbeat echo inside her chest. Damon had found her. The realization carried a strange mixture of emotions. Shock, confusion, relief she did not want to admit. Rowan stepped forward immediately. Gideon moved beside him. Several elders exchanged concerned glances. Yet none of them spoke. All eyes shifted toward Evelyn. Not because she was the strongest person present. Not because she held a title. Because somehow, without realizing it, she had become the center of everything unfolding around them. The royal party reached the valley floor minutes later. Damon dismounted before anyone else. Dust clung to his dark coat. His silver eyes searched the crowd. Then they found her. The world seemed to narrow. Hundreds of feet separated them. Yet Evelyn felt the weight of that gaze instantly. She remembered the throne room. The sentence. The certainty in his voice. The way he had turned away when she needed him most. Damon took a single step forward. Then another. Around him, the royal guards looked increasingly uneasy. None of them had expected this. None of them had expected to ride into a hidden valley filled with thousands of wolves from every territory. They certainly had not expected every one of those wolves to be kneeling before the woman they believed had been exiled. Murmurs spread among the royal escort. Confusion, disbelief, questions nobody could answer. Damon ignored all of it. His attention never left Evelyn. Slowly he crossed the valley floor. The distance between them shrank. 50 yards. 40. 30. Eventually he stopped near the base of the overlook. Silence settled over the mountains. Even the wind seemed reluctant to interrupt the moment. Damon looked around him. Wolves remained kneeling in every direction. Some of the oldest pack leaders in the territories had lowered their heads. Elders, alphas, representatives from distant lands, all offering respect to the woman he had condemned. The truth settled visibly across his face. Not all at once, piece by piece, like someone finally seeing an entire picture after staring at scattered fragments. His expression softened. Regret followed. Then something rarer appeared. Humility. Evelyn, he said quietly. Hearing her name in his voice again felt stranger than she expected. She remained silent. Damon glanced toward the gathered wolves, toward the sanctuary, toward the countless faces watching. I was wrong. The words echoed through the valley. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Damon continued. I trusted evidence that was designed to deceive me. I failed to question what should have been questioned. His gaze returned to hers. And I failed you. Evelyn stared at him for several seconds. A younger version of herself might have waited years to hear those words. A younger version might have broken down crying, might have rushed to forgive him. But standing above the valley now, surrounded by a history she never knew belonged to her, something had changed. Exile had taken everything familiar from her. It had also forced her to discover who she was without anyone else's approval. You did fail me, she answered softly. Damon lowered his eyes. The honesty of her response seemed to strike deeper than anger ever could. The valley remained completely silent. Then something unexpected happened. Damon removed the royal clasp from his coat, the symbol of his authority, the emblem every wolf recognized. Carefully, he placed it upon the ground. Gasps moved through the crowd. The gesture carried enormous meaning. He looked back up at Evelyn. I came here expecting answers, he said. Instead, I found the truth. His eyes drifted toward the thousands of kneeling wolves surrounding them. They already made their choice. Tears filled Elder Miriam's eyes. Rowan smiled faintly. Even Gideon seemed unable to hide his emotion. For generations, they had protected a story most believed would never matter again. Yet here it stood before them, living, breathing, real. Damon slowly lowered himself to one knee. The movement sent another wave of astonishment through the gathered wolves. The Alpha King bowed his head, not because anyone demanded it, not because anyone forced him, because he finally understood what everyone else had already seen. Evelyn looked across the endless valley. Thousands remained kneeling beneath the open sky. Wolves from every corner of the world. Wolves who remembered a name history had tried to erase. The late afternoon sun broke through the clouds, casting silver light across the mountains. Warmth touched her face. For the first time since leaving Blackwood Keep, she understood why her mother had hidden the truth. Some legacies were not inherited. They were earned. Evelyn took a slow breath. Then she stepped forward. Not toward a throne, not toward power, toward the future. And all across the valley, the wolves rose together.